Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, as I wear my Sting t-shirt for the retiring wrestler, Sting, Steve Borden, I want to talk about the importance of physical media and why, in particular, you need to be aware of physical media and why you should probably start collecting it if you have the means to. So, physical media is not for everyone. I get that. Streaming is definitely the winning platform. It's the way the future is moving towards. And obviously, as people downgrade and downsize, they are going to be looking at space that a physical media collection would take up. But why do you need physical media in the first place? Well, let's take a look at physical media that just isn't available on streaming. And I'm going to start with one of the biggest releases ever, and it's just not on streaming. And that is Dawn of the Dead. Now, this has a tumultuous history. There are two different versions of this movie. There is this one, and then there is also, which is, that's Romero's version. And then you have Zombie, which is Argento's version. So you have two different versions of the same film. Different takes, different scores, different interpretations of what was actually on the film, the negative itself. So, Dawn of the Dead, why is that not on streaming? Well, obviously the copyright and usage and everything with this movie has been tumultuous. There are other better videos that will explain the whole complicated history of Dawn of the Dead on trying to get it to streaming and even on physical media. But the fact that something as significant as Dawn of the Dead is not on streaming, that is kind of a problem for people, movie fans, who might have grew up on this movie, or even if you didn't grow up, discovering this movie. Like, don't get me wrong, the 2004 version by Zack Snyder is on streaming. I have checked, that is on streaming. But the fact that the original is not on streaming, I don't think Argento's version is on streaming either. The fact that one of the most significant movies, because it is one movie, it's just two different versions of the same movie. The fact that this movie is not on streaming kind of tells you that, what if you wanted to watch it? What if you wanted to go out and say, I want to watch Dawn of the Dead tonight as it was originally intended? Physical media. That's your only choice. And you would think in the day and age of the internet where streamers are trying to get your money, streamers are trying to get more subscribers, something like Dawn of the Dead would be a high ticket item to try to get the license for, to try to have on the streaming service. You could promote it as Dawn of the Dead first time streaming. You could actually promote something like that. But this is not available on streaming. It is complicated, and obviously the usage and copyright around Dawn of the Dead is a bit complicated, and, well, that's to say the least. But let's just put Dawn of the Dead over there for a moment, because there are many more releases that also do not end up on streaming. One of which is Kevin Smith's great movie Dogma. This is not on streaming, and I think in part this was probably due to, I'm thinking probably Clerks 2. Clerks 2 I don't believe is on there either, due to the Harvey Weinstein sort of thing and the Weinstein Company owning essentially that movie. But this one is not on streaming either, and you think that something as significant as Dogma, one of Kevin Smith's best movies, would be a contender to be on streaming. Well, it's just simply not. Lots of iconic scenes, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, one of their best movies together. And, this would have been around the time, or would this have been after Good Will Hunting? I think 98, so this would have been probably after or right before Good Will Hunting, definitely in that time span. One of the best Kevin Smith movies. You cannot get this on streaming. And Kevin Smith has talked many times about trying to get this a streaming option, trying to get it more readily available, trying to get it out there. But this has a complicated release like Dawn of the Dead due to the copyright, who owns it. Do they even see potential in this movie? Is it a product of the time? Like, obviously, it's a great movie, I love it. But, there are a lot of people who are very religious who might have a problem with this being on a streaming service. And look, people can protest art all they want. I understand that. You have a right to protest. but the art should also be preserved in its intended form. I don't believe this is too offensive, but I am not a religious person. I understand how this may be interpreted as somewhat controversial to some people of a religious background, but it's also one of my favorite Kevin Smith movies, and I believe this has a right to exist on streaming. And I hope Kevin Smith can get it as a streaming option, because I think newer generations who only grew up with Netflix, with Amazon, with Disney Plus, will miss out on the opportunity to experience one of the greatest movies of all time. And this Blu-ray is not even very readily available. I think there's probably a few thousand copies of this out in the wild. Like, it's in a lot of collections, obviously, but something like Dogma, Kevin Smith has even talked about even just getting it on Blu-ray was a bit of a feat. It's a hard movie to get out there. So we'll just put that aside as well. Another one I want to talk about is The Room. This has a cult following. Tommy Wiseau's was a director on this. It's actually a really good movie. It's look, it does have sync issues. I don't think it was intended to be bad, but it's gained a cult following because there are iconic lines, there's iconic scenes in it. There's a spoon art where you throw your spoons at the cinema screen when you see a spoon. Like, it's become a cult classic at this point, like the Rocky Horror Picture Show did. It's got that cult following, and that's in large part due to what Tommy Wiseau did here, and Greg Sestro. Sorry if I butchered that name. But, this movie is great. And when I ordered this, I got this directly from Tommy Wiseau. He sent me a picture in there, and also he sent me one that was signed, which, thank you, Tommy. That was awesome of you to do. You didn't have to. I didn't actually order a signed picture, but the fact that I got it in my collection is, I do appreciate it, and obviously I do love The Room. So, yeah, to have a signed picture from the director and also the movie on Blu-ray, I think that's great. But you won't find this movie on streaming. It has become a cult classic. They still screen it in cinemas, which is what a big production is. It's like, it's put back in cinemas for unique screenings. You want to experience it like Rocky Horror with an audience. So that's, I believe, in part why this doesn't have a streaming option. But also, look, if you don't want to go to the cinema or whatever, if you don't want to experience it that way, this is a movie you can only experience on physical media or at a cinema. So The Room is not on streaming, at least to the best of my knowledge. Tommy might be working on it. I don't want to jump the gun, and if Tommy is watching this at the moment, great work on this release. I'm waiting for the Big Shark release to get a more widespread Blu-ray release, at least in Australia. I'll be interested in buying it, but it's not available here yet. Also, another reason to collect physical media is editions. You can choose the experience you want. So, in Australia, we have a company called Umbrella, and this was put out with the US version. So the version that Australia grew up with was the international version, with Orange Sherbet, with the henchman family scenes inserted into the movie. That's the international release that we grew up with. And on the official release from Umbrella in Australia, this contained the US version, which did not have Orange Sherbet, which did not have the henchman families, and so on. So I watched this and I was like, I definitely want it in my collection because it is the US version and I want a version of that in my collection. But then I had to source from another country the version that I grew up with. So this is the international version imported from the UK. This has Orange Sherbet, this one has Henchman Families, and this has essentially the version I grew up on. So I have tailored that experience to suit what I want to watch, the version I want to watch. But that's one of the importance of physical media as well. You can pick and choose if a version is not the correct version on Blu-ray. And yes, on streaming is mostly the the US version. It's very rare you'll find the international version on streaming, because the US market is obviously the biggest market, and also a lot of the companies that release this on streaming are based in the US. So obviously the US will have the biggest reach. So obviously that is one big reason to collect physical media. because you can choose the version of the movie that you want to watch, which is very unappreciated in this day and age. Like, I think a lot of people wouldn't really mind, but you know, if you grew up with orange sherbet like I did, what I'm talking about is Christian Slater's scene in that movie. Christian Slater was actually in that movie. He's the henchman who says, "Can I please see your ID?" And that scene's not even in the movie, in the US cut. But that's the version I grew up on in Australia. That was on VHS in Australia. That was readily available in Australia. And Umbrella have released the US version. Obviously, they have made a deal somewhat behind the scenes that contained getting the US version. But the only way for me to watch the version I grew up on is DVD or to import the Blu-ray. So I imported the Blu-ray. Another one I want to talk about is something that is getting a physical release, a 4K release, but has not been on streaming, and it's one of the more notable titles not on streaming. I'll just put these across here because I have two different versions of these. I'll just put them over there. But True Lies and The Abyss. Now, these are getting physical 4K releases, I believe, this week, or they're just out, like, they're out in a couple of days. But for decades, you could not watch these on any other format besides DVD or previous formats like Laserdisc or VHS or so on. There was no way to watch these in a high quality version that was official from the studios, from Cameron himself. I mean, there was a bootleg version out there for many years that was recorded off, I believe, Italian TV or something, that was HD. But I think was it also True Lies, was that available on D Theatre? I'm not exactly sure. We didn't really get D Theatre too much in Australia, but I'm definitely aware D Theatre had a version of True Lies. But the fact that you could not get two of Cameron's best movies on streaming or on HD or on Blu-ray or 4K or anything for decades screams the importance of physical media. Because let's say outside of The Abyss and True Lies, because they are getting a physical release this week, outside of those, what if I want to watch a movie like Pirates of Silicon Valley? Great movie. I believe at Mac Conference 98, or whatever they called the Apple Conference back in 1998, after this TV movie was made, Noah Wiley was brought up on stage to impersonate Steve Jobs. Like, Steve Jobs had watched the movie and thought it was funny. And Steve Wozniak says this is probably the best interpretation and best depiction of what Steve Jobs was actually like. So it's one of Steve Wozniak's favourite movies, one of the co-inventors of Apple, and this is not available on streaming. Like, it's a telly movie from, I believe, Warner Brothers? Is it Warner Brothers? Yeah, Warner Brothers. So you cannot get this on any other format besides DVD or, you know, to hoist the Jolly Roger, as they say. But I've got the physical version because it's one of my favourite movies, and TV movies that is. And it's a great depiction of the early days of Apple versus Mac. Not Apple versus Mac. Apple versus Microsoft. Early depictions of that. This was made around the era where Steve Jobs made his return to Apple. Bill Gates, obviously, that's meant to be Bill Gates. And what's his name again? I forget his name. Anthony Michael Hall, that's him. Yeah, so it's a really great movie, but you cannot watch this on any other format besides DVD. Or, you know, if you have a recorded version of TV, because it was a telly movie back in the day, that's another way to watch it, obviously. But I've got it on DVD because I love the movie and I don't want to hoist a Jolly Roger. I want to support the official release. But, you know, that would have been shot on probably tape back in the day, so I don't know how much resolution you'd be able to get out of it pumping it up to Blu-ray. But, I mean, they could essentially do a up-to-date version with Noah Wiley. Not an updated version. I'm not a big fan of remakes unless it has a purpose to exist. But, you know, they could do an updated audio commentary with Noah Wiley and Anthony Michael Hall and talk about the significance of this movie, and Steve Jobs, talk about how Steve Jobs loved it. Like, get Steve Wozniak to do a bit of commentary about, I think this worked, I think this didn't work. Do a director commentary, do something that can do a package, you know, make it something. It doesn't have to be necessarily fully HD, but even if you can get a bit more resolution, like 720i or something out of that and put it on Blu-ray, that's still a nice little kick up from 576 or 480i or 480p. So It's a nice little kick up, but as I said, DVD is the way to experience that movie, Pirates of Silicon Valley, at the moment. Another one, and this has made a lot of waves this week, 28 Days Later. Where is this on streaming? No, seriously, tell me, where is this on streaming? I have searched everywhere for this on streaming, and it is not available anywhere, that I can find at least. One of the most significant movies that essentially put Cillian Murphy on the map. Like, we're talking about one of the... In terms of what it means to cinema, Dawn of the Dead was an innovator. Like, it revolutionized the way we thought of zombie movies. And then this re-revolutionized the way we think of zombie movies. This and its sequel, 28 weeks later? Is it 28 weeks? Yeah, 28 weeks later. I mean, that movie where... What's his name? He's getting chased. Let me have a look. Okay, so this one where... what's his name again? They make the names so small on here. Robert Carlyle, that's him. The scene where Robert Carlyle is getting chased by those zombies and the zombies are actually running after him, like... That is one of the most freaky scenes and one of the best opening scenes in cinema. Like, this was great, but let's say you wanted to do the back-to-back. You can probably watch this one on streaming. You can watch the sequel on streaming, but you cannot watch the original on streaming. And, you know, there are a whole generation of kids who will probably grow up not knowing the original version because it's not readily available. And let's face it, teenagers and early 20s people, Generation Z, might not be going out to buy Blu-rays. I mean, there are some who do, and if you're in that market and you're Gen Z, maybe chuck a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, why you collect it, why you think it's important. I'd love to hear what you have to say, because I am a millennial. I am a different generation. But something like 28 Days Later, one of Cillian's best movies, this should be on streaming. This is a movie that needs to be on streaming. There is a whole generation, like Dawn of the Dead, that should be on streaming too. But there is a whole generation, especially with the resurged interest in Cillian after Oppenheimer, that would be looking to watch as many Cillian movies as they can. And they would be missing out on one of his best. And that's a problem. So, we've talked about that. What about foreign releases? Like, there's a movie that I really like from Japan called The Calamari Wrestler. It's a bit of a silly experience. It's a bit of a take on comedy, and yes, it tries to be serious, but there's a lot of funny depictions in this movie, and I cannot find this on streaming. This is a niche Japanese movie that was put out on DVD. This is one of the reasons why DVD was so great, because you could find movies like The Calamari Wrestler and discover it and fall in love with it and be like, this is hilarious. Like, this you wouldn't probably be able to get on streaming. I don't know if this is the same in Japan, because I don't know what streaming services Japan has outside of the big ones. I know they have Netflix for sure. But where would you watch The Calamari Wrestler? Like, is that available in Japan? Outside of Japan, it's definitely a lot harder to track down. I have a copy. Like, the disc is also really good. I keep that baby in pristine condition. But, you know, it's a really fun movie. It's just meant to be a fun experience. It's not meant to be anything too serious. It's not trying to be a drama or a movie dressed up as, like, meant to be serious. It's actually, it understands what it's trying to be. And that's why it's so funny, because it's not taking itself seriously. But you're not going to be able to find that outside of probably DVD. That is a very unique experience to DVD at this point. I would be crucified. Oh, I don't want to say that. I would be destroyed if I didn't say something about wrestling. WrestleMania 17. But in particular, WWF releases. That logo right there. Not WWE. WWE would come later. It's the same company, but WWF got sued and had to change their name in 2002. So releases prior to 2002 had a different logo altogether, and the company had a completely different name. World Wrestling Federation, WWF. That's where you get WWF Attitude from. But for years and years, something like this was not shown in its unaltered form, so you could not find the WWF logo on any official release. Even when Jim Ross was doing commentary on the table during these releases, they had to go back and censor out Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler saying WWF Champion. They had to say just WW Champion. And so you have a lot of alterations to the digital version, but this is probably the definitive way to experience this event. Now, obviously, it's available with the WWF logo freely shown now on the network or Peacock or Binge in Australia. It is freely shown with the WWF logo, but what we don't consider is that a lot of the music rights in this release, so the Gimmick Battle Royale in particular, there was a lot of music like Tutti Frutti for Mean Gene Okerlund. That was replaced in the newer streaming versions because they obviously couldn't get the rights to Tutti Frutti. There's a lot changed in this release, and this one is as close to the original event as you can get. Obviously, there may have still been changes in the release, between the airing of the event and it being put on physical media. There could have been alterations made, but this is as close as you can possibly get to the original event without actually having the VHS recording off pay-per-view, So that is a reason to own physical media as well. If something like the WWF logo or music rights or expired copyrights happen, you still own a copy of what you want to watch and the version as it was intended to be seen. I've waited a bit longer to talk about the elephant in the room. And there's not an actual elephant in the room, but it is a topic, and I would be destroyed if I didn't mention the biggest reason to own a physical copy probably ever, because it's one of the biggest fan bases in cinema, and that's Star Wars. Now, these are the 2006 releases. That is, what's this? A New Hope? This is the limited edition that contains the extra disc that contains the theatrical version with the crawl reinserted that did not say A New Hope. It was 1977. It obviously was not intended to be it may have been intended to be a franchise, but at that point, it was just called Star Wars. It was not called A New Hope. It was not an episode. It was just Star Wars. This disc 2 contains a transfer from the Laserdisc, but with the original crawl reinserted back into the opening sequence. Obviously, you cannot get that version. You cannot get the theatrical version on any newer formats than this. This was the last official release of Star Wars, the original theatrical version. Official. Obviously, there are a lot of alterations to the other two as well. I mean, I don't really want to go too much into alterations because I'll be here all day. But obviously, these versions, Yub Nub on this in particular, was devastating when they removed that because, I actually preferred that version. But yeah, these are also the limited editions for Empire and also Jedi. So, Star Wars is a weird one. Star Wars is in many ways, what you go for when you start collecting this stuff. Because yes, everyone can have Star Wars. I've obviously got the 4K releases up here of A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi. I've got them on 4K. I don't watch them, that's why they're still in plastic. But, if I wanted to watch them if I wanted to watch an official version of the theatrical trilogy, the only way I can watch it officially is on DVD or previous formats like VHS, like Laserdisc, which I do have the Laserdiscs. But I do not condone hoisting the Jolly Roger. I mean, I do have HD versions of the original movie. I don't have HD versions. I have despecialized, that's what it's called, but I cannot endorse that. I don't think that's official. I want Disney to put them out officially so I can give Disney my money and say, here, I want these on the theatrical versions of Star Wars on physical media, and in return, I will buy them off you. Like, I will be a customer. I want to watch the theatrical versions. but they are not giving us any options at the moment. They have essentially erased those movies from the catalogue, as much as they did with Gone with the Wind. Like, Gone with the Wind has been essentially erased from the Fox catalogue, or what was the Fox catalogue, now 20th Century Studios under Disney. They have essentially erased, and this was done prior to the acquisition by Disney. It was done by George Lucas himself. You have to think Star Wars was really altered in 1997 and has just kept the Lucas's wishes going in a way that kind of it sticks to his wishes, but it also, look, people, whole generations have grown up with the post 1997 alterations. Han Solo shooting first. This version does not even contain Greedo getting off a shot. Like, this version contains the theatrical version where Han Solo shoots and Greedo didn't even have a chance to get to his weapon, you know? These are why, this is the biggest reason I can think of as to why to collect physical media. Because if versions are erased, you have no option but to watch the new versions. Whereas if you have the physical copies of the, even though these come in 2006 and they have problems themselves, you still have the theatrical version. If you have these, you can watch the theatrical version. It has problems, but obviously it is not something that's inaccessible. It's right there, ready to go at a second's notice. And, it is an official release. And I have to stress that. They are official. They were released by 20th Century Fox, or what is now 20th Century Studios, but this was released during the Fox days. And, you cannot get these anymore. These are, you can get them on the secondary market. You can buy them from other collectors. But you cannot get them on modern formats like Blu-ray and 4K in the original theatrical cut. The only way to watch them officially is on DVD or prior formats. And that is one of the big reasons to have physical media. And I want to finish off on one other thing. And I said I wasn't going to show off this week with this, but we did lose Akira Toriyama this week, or a few days. He passed away on the 1st of March, but it was announced this week. It was announced on the 8th. So I need to talk about Dragon Ball Z. And in particular, I'm going to have to tilt this down a bit, ain't I? I don't know if I'm going to be able to. We will try though, guys. We will try to tilt it down. There we go. I'll just sit back in the back of the frame here and talk. Look at this. This is really a beautiful artwork for Dragon Ball Z. These are what you call the Dragon boxes. They are essentially the definitive way to watch Dragon Ball, the original dub, so the Japanese dub. This is the definitive way to watch these. Obviously, it has some issues in itself with the optical sound that was used for these. The optical sound has been found in full, so I think it's in the possession of Chris Sabat. But obviously, with the acquisition of Sony, every Funimation being fully absorbed by Sony Corporation, I don't know how much power Chris Sabat has in that organization now. He does have it, so I have the Dragon Ball release from France that has the clean, found off, restored Dragon Ball, the original series. I have that on Blu-ray, imported from France, and it sounds beautiful because it was found from VHS copies that people actually recorded from Tokyo Tower back in the day on VHS, and they've taken the sound off that, put it back to the official release, and it sounds so much better than what we got with optical. I'm hoping that can happen with Dragon Ball, but obviously you get issues where they crop it in, and even the Blu-ray versions of Dragon Ball Z are problematic. They have the Blu-ray versions obviously have pretty bad cropping from Funimation. There are things done to that release that kind of mess with what was originally on the negatives. But at the end of the day, if you have an option to choose Dragon Ball on Blu-ray with 4:3 versus the 16:9 conversion, I'd say pick the steelbooks or pick the 4:3s, whatever it is, because it's probably as close as you can get without dropping money on the Dragon boxes. And look, the Dragon boxes aren't for everyone. They are very expensive now. I got into this for about 1,500 for these ones alone, 1,500 Australian dollars. And you know, if I was to sell these now, like, because there's such a resurgence in Dragon Ball now, these would probably cost about $5,000 or something like that, somewhere in that ballpark for the whole set. I'm sure people can do them cheaper. I'm sure I could probably. I'm not saying I would give $5,000, but at least $3,000 I think they would be valued at. Like, it depends how much a collector is willing to pay for it. I'm never selling them because I actually love this and I don't want to sell them. But, you know, the Dragon boxes are very important to anime and preserve the Japanese dub, the original animation. Like, so many times people will resync the audio on YouTube with the OBA, the original broadcast audio, which is what it's called. That's where you get the you get a couple of these mashups on YouTube that kind of restore it themselves. But all fans are just waiting for a proper restoration from Funimation and to see what Funimation do and to support the official release. I mean, on YouTube, I watched Team 4 Star, or I did watch Team 4 Star when they were doing Dragon Ball Z Abridged. But they always said at the beginning of each video when they were doing these stuff, they were saying, please support the official release. These are the official release. Although these are probably 21 years old this year. I think these came out in 2003. Let's have a look. I think it was 2003. 1989 to... They don't have a date on this. I'm going to assume it's 2003 because it sounds about right that it came out in 2003. But something like this, Dragon Ball, one of the most culturally significant anime and mangas of all time, this is still considered on DVD to be the best way officially you can watch Dragon Ball Z. I mean, fans have done their own restorations, obviously, but this is where it's at. This is the apex of collecting. This is, for me, one of the first things when I got back into physical media collecting. I knew I had to have the Dragon boxes. I knew this was the must-have. As with Dawn of the Dead, I knew that was the must-have. I knew Dogma was a must-have. I knew all these physical media releases that were only on a physical format. I knew that if I needed to watch them, that's the way I had to watch them. I had to go out and get the Blu-ray. I had to have them. Obviously, I collected a lot more. Let's put this back up because I am tilting too far down. But let's put them back off to the side. Let's push them back over there because I'm going to wrap this video up because I've been gone for 33 minutes. And I know I always say I'm going to wrap these videos up, but then I talk for another 10 minutes. Sorry about that. But yeah, let's put them back over there and let's bring you a bit closer so we can have a bit more of a chat. So, physical media, let's put that like that. There we go. That's a bit... I'm still a bit crooked, but we don't care about crooked. We're just having fun talking about physical media. So, as you can see, there are a lot of reasons to collect physical media. There are a lot of stuff that is on physical media that is just simply not on streaming. So, what do you do in that situation? If you don't have a Blu-ray player or you don't have the means to watch this on streaming, or like, how do you watch it then? Like, how do you watch something like 28 Days Later? How do you watch something like Star Wars theatrical? And this is the problem with studios. If it's not available on streaming, so many people will just say, don't care then. And it kind of ruins art form because, like, if people want to watch Pirates of Silicon Valley, it's in my opinion, one of the greatest biopics that was made. It's a telemovie. You wouldn't expect that. But Steve Jobs saw it and liked it. Steve Wozniak said, yeah, that's actually kind of what it was like. Like, there is a reason why that I really like that release. And, you know, if there's been movies that have been completely erased due to lawsuits, especially like there was a movie called The Game Changers that was a BBC production around the release of Grand Theft Auto. and I think Rockstar sued, and that movie has essentially become erased. Now, I think I got it downloaded before they erased it. I think I've got a copy somewhere. I don't know. I haven't watched it in a long time. But it's got Bill Paxton. It's got Daniel Radcliffe. It's got a really good cast, a good plot. But if you ever wanted to watch that movie does not exist anymore. It's not on streaming. It's not on physical. It's not anywhere. You cannot find a copy of the Game Changers, due in part due to the lawsuit. And even with trying to source a copy online, I believe, you cannot even do that. Like, I think Rockstar have been actively erasing copies or have been suing people who upload copies of that movie. So, you know, there is no way to watch that movie. As I said, I may have a copy somewhere, but I'm never going to share it. I'm never going to publicly talk about it. I am talking about it right now, but like what I mean is like take a scene from it and say, this is what happened in this movie and this and this and this. Because obviously I'm a fan of Rockstar and I do not want to make Rockstar angry. Other than if I eventually do a video about what they did to this not this specialized, what's it called? Remastered edition. What's the trilogy called? The definitive edition. Definitive. What they did to that, I may have to go into that at some point. But, I've also got the PS4 versions that were direct transfers from the PS2. So I've got those. I've also still got my PS2, so I can go back and play those. But what I mean is, like, Rockstar have actively promoted, like Metallica did in the early 2000s, we don't like people doing this. We're going to sue you if you do this. And so I don't even know if I've even got the movie, to be honest. I think I have it somewhere, but I've never actually looked. I've just assumed that I have it somewhere. And it's not on physical media. That's the thing. It's like the Game Changers, I believed it was an alright movie. It wasn't anything special, but clearly Rockstar have removed that from just about everywhere. BBC have cooperated with the lawsuit, and you cannot find that movie anymore. One of Daniel Radcliffe's good movie roles, Bill Paxton, one of his very late acting roles before obviously his untimely passing. And, this is why we need physical media. Because what happens if they say, you know what? Oh, with CDs in especially, like I'll quickly just do a mention for music. I own a copy of Ready to Die, Notorious B.I.G. I'll say it fast so hopefully I don't get flagged by the algorithm. But one of Notorious B.I.G.'s early albums, the first one, Ready to. I don't know if I can say it fully. I don't know. YouTube is a bit weird, I think. But that has been altered from its original form. The version you see out now in stores is not the original version because in 2006, I believe, Puff Daddy, Diddy, whatever you want to call him, the Bad Boy Records was sued for sampling, and they had to remove a bunch of samples. Like Machine Gun Funk no longer creates a love for funk. I don't believe that's under it anymore, the new versions. I have the original version, so I can still enjoy Notorious B.I.G.'s original album as it was heard by Notorious B.I.G. himself. But this is why physical media is important, because lawsuits can change these things, and time can change these things. Obviously, we've Gone with the Wind, which is sitting right behind me here, right there. Gone with the Wind has essentially been erased because it no longer fits what people understand as... It's no longer... What's the word for it? It's no longer popular to promote views like that. And don't get me wrong, it has racial undertones, Gone with the Wind. But how do we not use that as a discussion topic? Back when I was studying film, it was like, yes, we want to watch movies like by Leni Riefenstahl. I think, yeah, Leni Riefenstahl invented a lot of modern propaganda. And obviously there are movies there, which I can't mention on here, but, you research and you watch the camera angles and you understand why her shots were always from underneath and, like, why it always made someone look larger than life. That is how modern propaganda was created. But I do not have a copy of any of her movies in my collection because we're not allowed to talk about it, and we're not allowed to analyze film anymore. Like, well, we can analyze film, but I'm not actively allowed to talk about it. I mean, this is the thing. I am a fan of watching a movie, even if I think it's so problematic, the movie, I will still watch it and understand what I like about it, what I don't like about it, what could have been done better. I try to watch it with in two frames of mind. So I try to watch it if I was back in that era watching it as it was released, like Gone with the Wind, and then the modern setting. I try to understand how this will be comprehended by the new generations and Gen Z and Gen Alpha and the newer generations watching this movie and being like, we don't want to watch that. Like, yes, we understand it's not really, you don't want to promote those views anymore. But there's an old saying, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And also film, I will want to learn from it. I want to see camera techniques that was used, what, 70 odd 80 odd years ago. Like, I want to learn from that. I want to understand how this movie existed, how it was the highest grossing movie of all time, up to probably the time of Titanic releasing, and why it sold so many tickets over decade and decade of being out there. So, look, physical media is important just as a safeguard because you never know what a studio is going to do. Look at Wile E. Coyote versus Acme. Like, that is a Looney Tunes movie that Warner Brothers just essentially said, scrap it, tax write off. It was in the can, and it stars John Cena. And yeah, John Cena got up at the Oscars today and did something really out there. But like, it is a movie that was essentially done. It was ready to be released, and Warner Brothers essentially just said tax write off. I think David Zaslav didn't even view it. He mentioned that he didn't view it, or someone mentioned he didn't view it, and that movie was just erased. A Wile E. Coyote movie. We're talking about the Roadrunner, essentially. That movie was just erased without notice. All the people, all the hundreds and thousands of people that worked on that movie can no longer, no one's ever going to see that movie. The same thing is with Batgirl. Like, yes, I believe Batgirl would have been bad, but it has a right to exist, and I wanted to watch it so I could understand, oh yeah, this is really bad. And that's the thing, like, I haven't watched the newer DC releases beyond The Flash, because I thought The Flash was a bit bad, and I could see they were kind of winding down the universe. But I've still got stuff like Shazam in my collection, the newer Shazam, the second one, just in case, like, I do want to check it out, and I want to eventually see, okay, I know it got bad towards the end of the whole universe, of that DC universe when they were trying to reboot, but what works with it? What doesn't work? What were DC promoting with that? Like, I want to look at that in years to come and say, okay, where was the universe at that point? Where was the DC universe at? Same thing with Marvel. I will collect the Marvel releases still. I've got the Marvels over there. I've got the physical releases on TV somewhere here. I've got, where are they? I think they're up there or something. Like Loki, WandaVision. I've even got the Mandalorian up there. Like, I've got them on physical media because Disney have decided to put them out on physical media. And I try to support them so they know that people are actually buying this stuff, so they can see the numbers and say, yep, that is a investment we want to make. So that's why I buy it still. And yes, I will, if they ever decide, you know what if Loki did something? I don't think Tom Hiddleston is doing anything too bad. But let's say it's the same thing with Jonathan Majors, and let's say Jonathan Majors showed up in Loki, and they say, oh, well, we have to pull Loki because Jonathan Majors is in this, and we can no longer promote Jonathan Majors. Well, I own the Blu-ray, the 4K copy now, and I can still experience Loki as it was intended. And yes, I'll go in with modern goggles, depending what happens with the lawsuit with Jonathan Majors. Obviously, he has been found guilty at this point in time. I believe he's appealing it. I don't know what's going to happen with that appeal. I'm not going to speculate on it. Obviously, at this point, I'm aware of what's being said about him. But if I wanted to watch a Jonathan Major movie, if I wanted to watch Creed 3, which I haven't watched yet, I can pull that off the shelf and be aware of what has been said and what he's accused of and what he has been charged and found guilty of in a court of law. But I can still watch that with modern goggles and say, okay, but I want to tune out from the universe. I want to see the movie. When they're acting in a movie, I'm not watching Jonathan Majors. I'm watching the character he's playing in Creed. I'm not watching that person. Obviously, I'm aware of the actor behind that character being charged with something. But obviously, I still would want to watch that movie. And I would want to watch it in a way that it was intended. And that is what I'm going to wrap on. If you liked this video, it's a longer one than I usually do, 45 minutes worth. Sorry, you guys are on a marathon with me, but yeah, just to reiterate, physical media is so important because you never know what's going to be released, what's going to be pulled tomorrow from streaming services or iTunes or whatever. There was a situation with me where iTunes pulled my release for, or what I paid for on iTunes, which was the Equalizer 2, and it's one of the last digital releases I bought because I paid good money for that, and iTunes they ended up giving me a refund because they had to, but they essentially said, oh, well, you can't have the movie, but you can't have your money back because, you viewed it once, and that was considered to be, oh, you've got your money's worth. Now I have it on my shelf. I can watch it. Where's the Equalizer? Equalizer 2 is right there, along with the Equalizer. And I can watch that as many times as I want. I don't have to worry about iTunes saying, or Amazon saying, or whoever I buy it off, saying, you can no longer watch this movie because we've lost the license and you're not allowed to have it. I don't have to deal with that. It's in my collection, ready to go at a second's notice. And it's a safeguard. I can preserve it in the way it was intended. If they ever decide, oh, we have to change one or two scenes, I've got the original version. I've also got on DVD the original version of 13 Reasons Why. And that is a very graphic scene in the final episode. But, when I first watched that scene really messed me up. But I would still say I would want to watch that original version. Obviously, I'm aware that it's very graphic. It gives it promotes stuff that probably shouldn't be promoted to teenagers. But I would still view that version on DVD that I have, the original version, over something of the newer release on Netflix because I am a preservationist. I want to see it in its original intended form, the way it was meant to be seen. And that is just how I feel. And that is why I keep things like Star Wars around. The 2006 limited edition releases. Because I want to watch them in their original form. Yes, it is a pretty bad transfer from Laserdisc and has its problems. But it's an official copy of the theatrical versions of Star Wars. And I do not like the post-1997 changes. So I have catered my experience to watch those versions. I want to hear the original music on WrestleMania 17. I want to experience this the way it was intended, with WWF logo, original music, the way it was intended, as close to as intended as possible, because obviously there would have been some changes. And then stuff like Dawn of the Dead that just isn't on streaming at all. I want to watch Dawn of the Dead. I want to watch 28 Days Later. I want to watch these movies that streaming or licensing deals can't be made for. Because of copyright, because of multiple versions, because it no longer fits the public perception of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, I would want to still watch these versions of movies because it grows my understanding as a film buff, and it grows my understanding as a preservationist, and it grows my understanding as why was this released? How was this made? Why is this so popular, for example? Why did cinema goers for 70 odd years go and see Gone with the Wind? I want to understand that, and the only way I can see that, I can't understand that by watching an altered version. I can't understand that if they're not willing to stream it. I can only understand it by pulling the version off my shelf, putting it in my Blu-ray player, and saying, I'm going to watch Gone with the Wind, and I'm going to understand what is the appeal of this movie. So yeah, there is a lot of reasons to collect physical media. Dogma especially, if Kevin Smith had a lot of years with the Weinstein Company, I believe. I think he did collects 2 under Weinstein. And obviously with everything that happened with Harvey, with us finding out what he did to people, the Collects 2 is in a weird place now where it's kind of like, it's got a Blu-ray release. There is a Blu-ray release. I've got it in my collection. But essentially, that movie hasn't got any further promotion because it's tied up in the Weinstein Company. And yeah, this is a big reason to have physical media. Because you never know what studios are going to do. You never know if your favourites are going to get a release. And what happens if they change your versions. The versions you're nostalgic for. If you say, oh, well, I don't care, I'll just watch whatever they put in front of me. What happens if tomorrow they replace Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street with Five Nights at Freddy's? It'll be freaking hilarious. But obviously some film buffs would say, hold on, I want to watch Freddy Krueger. Where is Robert Englund? Where is he? That's the version I'm nostalgic for. Well, if they change it, you're out of luck. The new versions are what you're going to have to watch. Unless you've got physical media. And that's where I'm going to end it, because I am ranting at this point. So thanks for watching this long if you've stayed this long. I am so glad you guys are here with me, and we will do more videos like this. This was kind of an essay in a lot of ways, me just talking off the cusp and talking about why physical media is so important in 2024. And yeah, why you should be very aware that physical media still has a place in 2024, because you never know what you're going to get. And with physical media, you can essentially support the official release while choosing a version, an older version if they've done something weird to it, that you believe is the right way to experience the movie. You can cater it to your tastes. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around this long. And if you stuck around this long, maybe chuck me a comment, subscribe, a like, whatever you want to do. But I love the engagement. I love seeing what all you guys comment. I love seeing you guys talk about how you experience movies, how you buy, why you got back into physical media, why you kept collecting physical media, why you are a part of this community. I love hearing it, and I do read the comments. I do give out likes. I do read almost all the comments. I try to get to them all, but I know a lot of YouTubers try to recommend against reading the comments. But definitely, I am reading them, and I am so blown away that so many people are watching my videos. Even though we're still, I think one of my videos just hit 400 views, which is great. I think that is amazing. But, you know, even the ones that have 40 views, like 40 people have, even if all those views are just people clicking it and then clicking away, I look at the comments because I'm like, oh, comments essentially mean people have watched these videos. And if someone has liked it, that means that they've actually taken time to interact with that video. So I appreciate all you guys commenting. I appreciate all you guys liking the video. And I appreciate all you guys subscribing, because I saw my subscriber count go up a couple of dozen in the past week or so. So I am so blown away by the support. And if you've liked this video, hey, maybe stick around. We'll make more videos. We'll talk more about movies, and sky's the limit with this channel. Who knows? We'll make it into something. I don't think I'm going to be films at home. Jeff does his own thing, and he does it very well. But I'll be the first me, the first version of me. I won't have to be Jeff from Films at Home. I'll be the first Jamie from my channel. So yeah, thanks for watching, and like, subscribe, comment, and yeah, let's talk physical media, because I love physical media, and I love all you guys watching me. So peace till the next one. Thanks for watching.